Virginians have always stood at the crossroads of the fight for freedom. It is a battle in which we all reap the benefits. In the decade following the Korean War, America led the fight against communist aggression around the world. Decades of political upheaval in Vietnam, a small country in Southeast Asia, pitted the communists from North Vietnam against South Vietnam. In the late 1950s, the United States sent troops to Vietnam, and in 1964, the conflict escalated into an all-out war. As the Vietnam War dragged on and frustrations grew, opinion back in the U.S. turned against the war, causing internal strife across the nation. In 1975, after nearly 2 decades and over 58,000 U.S. troops killed in action, the United States withdrew from Vietnam, leaving a legacy of questions and doubts for our country and her soldiers. As 1967 drew to a close, intelligence reports pointed to a major offensive push by the North Vietnamese at Khe Sanh. As the U.S. leadership prepared for what it believed would be a decisive victory, the North Vietnamese infiltrated South Vietnam, and on the day of the Vietnamese New Year, known as Tet, launched attacks on 13 of the 16 provincial capitals of South Vietnam. Although considered a military victory for U.S. troops, the Tet Offensive was not seen as such back home, and public opinion began to turn against the war.
We got involved very heavily with Khe Sanh. You may remember that Khe Sanh was a Marine base. There were 5,000 of them, surrounded by Viet Cong and North Vietnamese. It looks like the North Vietnamese were using Khe Sanh as part of a deception because meantime they were planning this great Tet Offensive.
Tet was a situation where it was a map, a tapestry of battles all over the country. If you look at a map, they have maps that show spots where all these fights took place. It was basically, it was a tapestry of all these battles.
Tet of 68, the people had to make a choice because the VC were right there and you either fought them or went along with them. Most of them chose, at least the ones I dealt with, chose to support the government and the Americans.
The Tet Offensive changed the complexion of that war totally. The enemy was divided into local forces, regional forces, and the main force, the North Vietnamese.
They were sort of told that if they infiltrated the cities and started fighting, that the populace would rise up and join them, and this didn't happen. So they were isolated in the towns and they were wiped out before they could leave the cities. The cities got hit harder than the countryside.
Tet was not a river phenomenon. It was a shore-based phenomenon where the NVA and the Vietnamese, the VC, could terrorize the most people and probably kill the most people.
Probably the thing that surprised most people over there was how well coordinated it was, that it hit all over the country at essentially the same time, the same day and essentially the same time.
The worst time was Tet in January. The last week of January 68, we were attacked, and I remember living in a foxhole for a week. When it hit, it was at night, and everything around me turned blood red. It was just blood red from the explosions and you talk about fireworks. That's the best fireworks I've ever seen in my life, but you're so scared, you know. And then the shrapnel and the stuff from the bombs going off. And the word was passed down the line that they were trying to get into the base.
It was tough. Again, it was the beginning of the Tet Offensive. There was just so much going on. For the first 2 weeks, at least every 2 to 3 hours, the alarm will go off that we should get up and run to the bunker because we are under fire.
When you went out in the field, you didn't know where the front line was. There was no front line. I mean, the enemy was everywhere. I mean, all over. They had tunnels where they could come and go.
We were fighting against what they call the VC. And these guys would be right in the village with us during the daytime. And they would come in and cut our hair in the daytime and cut our throat at night.
I was scared like everybody else. Everybody's scared, you know. But I mean, you just try to stay controlled and do what you're supposed to do. When I was young, 17, 18 years old, and then you put into positions of responsibility. At 19 years old, were you responsible for 6, 7 other men, to keep them alive and yourself alive?
It was a Chinook helicopter. It was double prop Chinook, and we radioed in for a pickup, and we settled into this little cove-like little flat place, and we walked around and we checked it out. We secured it, and we didn't think anyone was there, and the helicopter was on its way, and he had a backup behind him, and we popped some smoke, and they came on in and picked us up, and just as we cleared the tree line a little bit, we got some ground fire, and we took a hit to the front, and it just shook the whole helicopter. When it hit the ground, everybody was just thrown clear of it. But a lot of us were covered with fuel that was already on fire. I was on fire, and I was being shot at, and I was running to them. Kip ran me down and jumped up on my back and just rode me down to the ground. I outweighed him probably by 40 pounds. But he came running after me, and he rode me down and put his hand over my mouth so I wouldn't breathe the flames, and I was on fire. I burned about 35% of my body. He rolled me down and got the fire at it and dragged me back. But there were guys up in the helicopter. They were just, I knew they weren't getting out. When I got back there, it was just charred. And the helicopter behind us started laying down some fire. It was one of those Hueys, I guess, with a door gunner and everything. They came around beside us, and it was over as fast as it started, probably. But the damage had been done, and there was fire everywhere, and you could smell death, It's the worst smell you ever want to smell. It was burning flesh, so that was me.
For me, it was a matter of, I identified really closely with them as brothers because they were so close to my age, and I had brothers that age. And so to me, it was just like giving care to family. As much destruction and cruelty and horrific sights as there were, when I was in there, what I saw around me was tremendous love and concern for fellow men, and that was extended to the Vietnamese casualties as well. So that's how you do it.
The thing that bothered you more than the death were the disabilities and the age of the kids you saw. They were tough, and a lot of them had good attitudes. Most of them had good attitudes. They were doing what the government asked them to do.
We were kind of sitting big, dumb, and happy on that road, and nobody bothering us. Again, it was just too quiet. And then all the radio traffic started. We could just constantly see artillery going off. That night about 12:30 the next morning, we get a call. We need ammunition, we're running out. So we dug out the ammo and just absolutely piled it on the tanks. That's all we could do, just piled it on the tracks, We started out. Pleiku was about 20 kilometers, about 10, 12 miles, something like that. Joe was literally running out of ammo. They were running out. And they had run out of main gun, and they were shooting with pistols. Went down to where those tanks were. I thought they were going to hug us, out in the middle of everything. So we got there in just the nick of time that day. It was the first day.
Tet was just, it was chaotic. It was just chaos. There was so much going on. If you ever heard the expression of hell on earth, then sometimes I feel how we walked through it.
We were then sent to the north edge of Saigon, went to this village to evacuate all the people in the village. The village was a known VC village, but we're not going to kill the people. We're going to take them and displace them, disperse them, do something with them into one of the hamlets or wherever. One of the guys is in the picture bringing this older lady out from one of the hooches and trying to get her to leave. So we're going to get her on some kind of vehicle and help her because, you know, we wouldn't show her how well she could. She squatted down in the center of the street. A lieutenant whose name is on the wall came up and tried to talk to her and encourage her and offer assistance to help her to get out before something happened to her. When he looked away from her, she reached into her jammies, pulled out a 9mm pistol and shot him through the throat, into the head, killed him instantly. She was killed. And I have no ill feelings about her death. Because this was a nice guy. He was a really nice man, and trying to do something that was right, trying to save this woman's life, and his life ended very quickly.
So many brave young Marines, young kids, 18, 19 years old. Here, I'd been in the Marine Corps for 12 years by that time. And the heroics and what they went through and the things they did, you never forget them. It'll always be with me, always. I'm proud of them.
They're sort of the, unsung, but the best that this country produces. I mean, young warriors, hard-nosed, do-your-job kind of guys in the best tradition of the naval service, without a lot of kudos or a lot of pats on the back from anybody other than what we generated internally.
And later on in life, I wondered, why was I spared when so many weren't?
When I began to hear from my wife, we, realized that there was that what the press was portraying and the real situation were two different things. That it was, from everything I know and have heard, it was portrayed sort of as a defeat over here, but it wasn't. It was a military victory, political defeat now, but a military victory.
The war was a tactical and operational success. The politics of the war had nothing to do with the fighting of it. We did better things for the Vietnamese people than are being done for them now.
We trust people. We're awful generous in the things we offer to in these foreign countries to others. But yet they'll turn around and use it to kill us off or get rid of us.
The Viet Cong, the North Vietnamese, lost. Their only thing, saving grace they had, is they didn't care how many people they lost. To us, to lose one person was like losing 100 to them.
The only thing they gained was political in this country. That was the big victory for them. Anybody who participated in Tet, we basically destroyed. For all intents and purposes, it destroyed the hardcore VC. There were no more VC per se left in the Central Highlands. We crippled the North Vietnamese Army during Tet. But when you looked at the big picture and overlaid it with the units involved and who was involved in the numbers, they didn't recover from that until 1972. I mean, we just literally destroyed the North Vietnamese Army. Their grand scheme to cut the country in half at the Highlands, for instance, that was their primary dream at that point, as well as to cause the populace to rise up in their support. It didn't happen. It didn't happen at all. And they lost a generation during that fight. I mean, they lost, I don't know, how do you recover from that?
do solemnly swear that I will defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, and that I will obey the orders of the officers appointed over me. So help me God. So when you get orders to go somewhere and to do something, that is your obligation. I am a black American. I did everything that the United States asked me. I'm proud of that uniform, but was told when we came out of Vietnam, do not travel in it. Get out of it. I'm fighting for America. This country I love. Born and raised and have worked all my life to make America a great place as I can. I love it.
The horrors of war, of seeing people maimed, both sides, by the way, seeing innocent people that have suffered. It makes one wonder that anybody who openly advocates war, there's something wrong here. By saying that, there are instances where that is the only alternative. It's sad to say that there are people in this world who the only thing they know is force.
There's lots of reasons to fight, and defense of your family or country are probably the best, I think. But what is defense of your country is a pretty open question. And that's for politicians to decide, not soldiers.
If the war was lost, and it was lost somewhere else. It wasn't lost in Vietnam.
I'm not a military man, I'm certainly not a politician. But you got the idea the war was being fought from Washington and not from Vietnam.
You don't fight for your country. You enlist to serve your country. But when the time comes, you fight for yourself and the man next to you.
Soldiers fight for each other when the bullets are flying, and the politics is very far away.
So many lives, so many dreams, so many aspirations of young people would never been lost. I hope this country never sees another war like that. Ever. But for the experience I received from being in the Army, man, I tell you, I'm proud. I'm proud of what I did. I'm proud that I was a soldier. You know, I'm proud I served my country.